You practiced your presentation 10 times.
Alone. In your room. You had it.
Then you stood in front of real people and something happened.
And suddenly, your English is gone. You know what I mean?
Not bad, not broken, just gone.
Your brain goes blank. Your voice sounds like someone else's.
And your first sentence comes out like this.
So, yeah, today I want to talk about.
That's what came out. That was your opening. Flat, safe, forgettable.
We're fixing that today. Welcome to Easy English with PJ. I'm Logan.
And I'm PJ, and today's episode hits close for me because that moment Logan just described, I've lived it more than once.
Most people think the problem is their English, but it's usually not.
And that belief alone, that's what ruins most presentations.
So by the end of this episode, you'll know exactly how to start strong, how to guide your audience, and what to say when your mind goes blank.
And we'll give you real phrases you can actually use today. Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched a native English speaker give a presentation and thought, I don't understand why they sound so confident because they're not even saying anything that complicated?
Yes, all the time.
That's the thing. Native speakers aren't perfect, not even close, but they sound in control. And in English, that's everything, right?
So what's actually different?
A few things. First, clarity beats complexity. A lot of learners try to sound impressive, long sentences, big vocabulary. But native speakers do the opposite. Short sentences, direct points, because clear works. Think about it.
And the audience feels that immediately.
Exactly. Second, English-speaking audiences expect structure. They want a roadmap. If you don't tell them where you're going, they get lost fast. And once they're lost, they stop listening. You felt that before, right?
And that's where most non-native speakers get into trouble, right? They just start talking without a map.
No map. And the third thing, which most people don't expect, is that energy matters more than accuracy. A small grammar mistake? Nobody cares. A monotone voice with no pauses? People tune out. People remember how you made them feel, not just what you said. That's true in any language, right?
So a slight mistake is fine, but a flat delivery kills it.
Completely. And here's the last cultural thing. And this one changed how I think about presentations entirely. It's not, what do I want to say? It's, what does my audience need to understand?
That flips the whole thing.
It does. And it means pauses are not failure. Silence is not awkward. Silence is control. When you pause, people think, this person knows exactly what they're doing.
So a good English presentation isn't perfect. It's easy to follow.
That's the whole game. And if this is already shifting how you think about presenting, wait until you hear what's coming next, because the story in the next section is the one most people never forget.
Okay, PJ, you said this hits close. Tell me the story.
All right, so this was about a decade ago. I was working in materials development, and I had to give a presentation to one of our biggest customers, a top mobile device brand from the US.
That's already a lot of pressure.
Very. And right before I walked in, my boss pulled me aside and said, include a joke.
Your boss told you to make a joke in a business presentation.
In a business presentation to American engineers in English, which wasn't my first language. And I thought, that's a terrible idea. But he was my boss, so
So you did it anyway.
I did it anyway. And here's the situation. I was the last presenter of the day. The customer had been sitting through presentations since morning. More than 10 presentations back to back. By the time it was my turn, I could see it on their faces. They were exhausted. They wanted to leave. You can picture that, right? They were thinking about their hotel beds.
That is the worst spot to be in, seriously.
The absolute worst. And I remember thinking, this could go really bad, because if this doesn't land, I'm done. But instead of starting with, "Today I want to talk about," I stopped and I said, "Before I start the presentation, how many of you have ever heard of T-1000, that hard-to-kill machine from the movie Terminator?"
Wait, you asked about Terminator in a business presentation?
Every single hand went up. My customers, my colleagues, everyone.
That's when you knew you had them.
And then I said, "How many of you know it's made of liquid metal?" Hands still up. And then I said, "Good, because the material we're going to discuss today is the next generation advanced material, the one we'll be developing with you for your next product."
Okay, that's smooth.
And I watched it happen in real time. 1 second earlier, people were barely keeping their eyes open. Then I asked that question, and you could see it. People woke up. Real interest. Just from one question. Like, what is she about to show us?
One question. That's it.
And I caught my boss's expression from the side of the room. That smile. And honestly, that made me more confident for the whole rest of the presentation.
Okay, but was there a payoff later?
4 years later, I was in a meeting with a senior engineer from that same customer, and he looked at me and said, "I remember you. From that presentation, you really nailed it."
4 years later, he still remembered.
4 years. One question. That's what a strong opening can do.
That's why structure matters. Because if you have the right tools, even the hardest situation becomes one you can own.
Right. And here's what I want you to notice. I didn't do anything complicated. I didn't use advanced vocabulary. I asked a question everyone could answer. That's it. Let me ask you a question. That's one of the most powerful ways to open a presentation in English.
All right, let's build this properly, because if PJ can turn a room full of exhausted engineers into an engaged audience with one question, you can do the same.
Most presentations fail for one simple reason: no structure. None. So here's the formula that actually works: hook, roadmap, content, signpost, close. Let's break it down.
Starting with the hook. This is your first 30 seconds, and most people waste it, right?
They waste it with, "So, today I want to talk about," or "Good morning, my name is," and that's fine, technically, but it doesn't grab anyone.
So what works?
3 things work, almost every time: a question, a surprising fact, or a short story. That's it. For questions, you can say, "Let me ask you a question," or "Have you ever wondered?" or "What would you do if?" All of these pull the audience in immediately.
And most people mess this up in the first 10 seconds, because suddenly they're talking at the audience instead of with them.
Exactly. Or you can open with a fact. "Did you know that?" followed by something surprising. Or a short story. "3 years ago, I made a mistake," and then you tell it. Any of these work. What doesn't work is starting flat, starting without an invitation.
And here's what most people miss. It doesn't have to be long. PJ's T-1000 moment was about 30 seconds. One question, one follow-up, then straight into the presentation.
Short and strong. That's the goal. And the next part of the formula is where most people skip and pay for it later.
After the hook, you give them a roadmap. And this is where learners often jump straight to their content.
And that's the mistake. The roadmap tells your audience, here's where we're going, here's how long we'll be here, and here's what you'll walk away with. Without it, people get impatient fast. Think about it.
So what does a roadmap actually sound like?
Simple. Today, I'll cover 3 things. Or, I'll talk about 3 things. Or, here's what we'll cover. Then you list them. First, then, and finally. That's all it takes. In 3 sentences, your audience knows what to expect.
And here's why this matters culturally. English-speaking audiences, especially in professional settings, they value their time. When you give them a roadmap, you're telling them, I respect your time. I'm organized. I know what I'm doing.
And they relax, because they're not guessing anymore. I'll start with, then, and finish with. That one sentence changes the whole room.
If you've ever sat through a presentation that felt like it was going in circles, it was probably missing this. And what comes next is the piece that quietly loses audiences in the middle of even good presentations.
Signposting. This is the one most people skip, and it's exactly why they lose their audience halfway through.
What is signposting?
It's how you guide people from one part of your presentation to the next. Think of it like road signs. If you're driving somewhere new and there are no signs, you get confused, you slow down, you stop trusting the route. Signposting does the same thing for your audience.
So it's the phrases you use in between your main points.
Exactly. Let's move on to, now let's look at, next I'd like to talk about. These aren't filler, they're signals. That's the difference. They tell the audience, we're done with that, and here's what comes next. And so far we've discussed helps people recap without feeling lost.
No signs, people get lost. It's that simple, right?
And a lot of learners just jump from point to point with no connection, no bridge, and the audience feels it right away. Something feels off, but they can't say why. This brings us to, that brings us to, moving forward, all of these create a smooth ride.
You can also pause. Let's pause here is powerful. It sounds intentional. It sounds confident, even if you're just buying yourself a second to think.
Which brings us to something important. Pausing is not weakness. Pausing is power. When you pause, you look like you're thinking carefully. Before we continue, gives you a breath. Let's review quickly. Lets you reset. Use them. And now let's look at what actually happens when things go sideways in a real room. Let's run through some real situations, because knowing the formula is one thing. Hearing how it actually sounds is different.
Scene 1. The week opening. You've practiced, but you're nervous, and you start with, so, good morning everyone. My name is, and today I want to talk about...
The audience feels nothing. You've seen that before, right? Compare that to, let me start with a story, or here's something interesting that happened last year. One of these invites people in, the other just starts.
Scene 2. The lost audience. You're halfway through, and you notice people looking at their phones. Why? No structure was given. They don't know where you are in the presentation. They can't follow.
Here's the fix. So far, we've discussed to remind them where they are, and let's move on to the next point, to show them where you're going. That alone brings people back.
Scene 3. The nervous speaker. You're going fast, too fast. Your words are running together. You're not breathing. It happens.
Slow down. That's it. Give me a second is a real phrase you can say out loud during a presentation. So is hold on, I'm thinking. These don't make you look unprepared. They make you look honest and in control.
And the most common mistake of all?
Trying to sound too advanced, long sentences, complex vocabulary, complicated grammar, and then losing the thread in the middle of a sentence because it was too long to hold together.
The rule is, if people can follow you, they'll respect you. Simple and clear beats complicated every time.
And there's one more mistake that almost everyone makes.
The ending.
The ending. People finish their last point and say, "That's it," or "That's all," and then they just stand there. It falls flat. It feels like the presentation didn't land anywhere.
So how do you close strong?
You summarize, and you leave them with something. To summarize, then your key points. The key takeaway is, then one clear idea. If you remember one thing, and then make it count. Or, let me leave you with this, and give them something to think about.
Thank you for your time. And, I appreciate your attention, are both natural and warm, not robotic. Use them at the end, not the beginning. Okay, let's talk about what happens when things go sideways, because they will.
They always do. No matter how prepared you are, you lose your place. You say something awkward. You realize mid-sentence that what you said didn't come out the way you meant it.
What do you do?
First, don't panic. Take a breath. "Let me rephrase that" is one of the most natural things you can say. Native speakers say it all the time. Seriously. So does "what I meant was," and "that came out wrong" is honest, it's human, and people actually warm up to you for saying it.
And honestly, people trust you more when you say that. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're in control enough to catch yourself and fix it.
And if you didn't understand a question someone asked, don't guess. Just say, "Can you say that again?" Or, "Could you repeat that?" Or you can buy time with, "That's a good question," before you think. "I'm not sure, but" gives you a moment to gather your thoughts honestly.
And how do I say this? Said out loud in the middle of a presentation sounds completely natural. It sounds like a real person talking, not someone reading from a script.
Because you're not reading from a script, you're talking to people. And that's the whole point. Because this is where most people stop fighting themselves. And that shift changes everything.
Here's the thing that changed how I think about this. Most people go into a presentation thinking, don't make mistakes.
Sounds right, but it's actually the wrong goal. Think about it, because your audience isn't grading your grammar. They're asking one thing. Can I follow this person? Do I understand what they're saying?
So the real goal is, be easy to follow.
That's it. Clear beats perfect. Every time. Remember that. And when you shift from "don't mess up" to "help them understand," something changes. You stop gripping the lectern. You start actually talking to people.
And that shift is audible. People hear it. The energy changes.
And this is what my boss understood that I didn't 10 years ago. He wasn't telling me to make a joke. He was telling me to connect, to be human, to remember that there are real people in the room who are tired and who want to care about what you're saying.
And when you give them something to connect to, they will. All right, let's bring it home.
Hook, roadmap, content, signpost, close. That's the formula. None of this requires perfect English. It requires clarity and intention.
Slow down, and you sound smarter. It's true.
Clear beats perfect.
And if something goes wrong? Let me rephrase that. Keep going. Nobody's keeping score.
The audience is on your side. They want you to succeed. All you have to do is give them a reason to follow you.
Here's your challenge for this week. Record yourself giving just the opening of a presentation, 30 seconds. Use one of the opening phrases from today. Let me ask you a question. Here's something interesting. Imagine this. Pick one. Record it. Listen back.
Record it once, and you'll hear why people lose the room, and you'll know exactly what to fix.
If this episode helped you, share it with someone who has a presentation coming up. And next time you walk up to present, don't start with, "So, today I want to talk about."
Start with something that makes people look up.
We'll see you in the next one.
And don't try to be perfect. Just be clear. That's enough. Bye.